Imagine standing in front of someone you care deeply about, feeling that rush of warmth and connection and wanting nothing more than to express your love with a hug. You step closer, arms open, heart beating a little faster, imagining that moment of closeness. But then something shifts. You notice a subtle stiffening of their shoulders, a quiet tension in their posture, or the faint, almost imperceptible pull back. Suddenly, what you intended as a gesture of love feels wrong. You might even wonder, did I just push them away? The truth is, when it comes to people who naturally distance themselves emotionally, even something as simple as a hug can become a minefield. There's a delicate balance between offering comfort and inadvertently triggering their instincts to retreat. And understanding that balance isn't just helpful, it's essential if you truly want to connect with them in a way that feels safe, respected, and meaningful. For those who find themselves navigating relationships with someone who instinctively keeps emotional space, the very act of physical touch can carry layers of complexity most people don't realize. A hug isn't just a hug. It can feel like an invasion of personal space, a sudden confrontation with vulnerability, or even a subtle challenge to the boundaries they've set for themselves. When someone pulls away in that moment, it's not because they don't care or don't want intimacy. It's because their nervous system has been conditioned to protect itself from emotional closeness that feels overwhelming or unsafe. And if you don't recognize these patterns, what you think is a loving gesture can unintentionally become the exact opposite, a signal to pull away, to retreat, to protect themselves even more fiercely. This is why knowing what not to do is far more important than knowing what to do in these situations. It's not about avoiding intimacy altogether or tiptoeing endlessly around them. It's about understanding the hidden dynamics that influence their reactions and approaching every interaction with empathy, patience, and awareness. Even if your intentions are pure, one wrong move can trigger anxiety, defensive behavior, or a silent withdrawal that can last hours, days, or even longer. And the frustration that comes from trying to connect, only to feel them slip away, can leave you questioning your own actions, your own worth, and the very nature of your relationship. But here's the thing. You don't have to walk blindly into this. You can learn to read the subtle signs, respond in ways that feel safe, and gradually build a connection that actually invites closeness instead of triggering avoidance. Understanding why this happens starts with understanding how their mind works. People who naturally hold back emotionally are not rejecting you personally. Their nervous system interprets closeness as a potential threat even when it isn't. Their instinct is to protect themselves from overwhelming feelings or from situations that might make them feel trapped. Hugs, kisses, or sudden movements into physical space can trigger that instinct without them even consciously realizing it. When they stiffen, pull back, or seem distant, it's not a reflection of your warmth or your love. It's their survival mechanism quietly at work. And the more you push without awareness, the stronger that mechanism becomes. So how do you approach this without feeling like you have to walk on eggshells forever? The first step is empathy. It's about recognizing that your desire for closeness may not align with their comfort zone, and that's okay. Instead of taking their pullback personally, try to imagine the world from their perspective. Picture how a sudden hug feels to someone who instinctively flinches from intense emotional or physical contact. Think about the tension in their body, the racing thoughts, the internal dialogue of needing space while wanting to connect. Feeling this perspective doesn't mean you suppress your own emotions. It means you adjust your actions so that closeness becomes something safe, inviting, and welcome, not threatening. One of the most powerful things you can do is slow down. Notice the cues in their body language before you even step in for a hug. Is there eye contact that softens? Are their shoulders relaxed or tight? Are they leaning in or slightly pulling away? These subtle signs tell you everything you need to know about whether your gesture will be received as loving or perceived as pressure. Sometimes even pausing for a heartbeat and offering a gentle smile or a soft hand on the shoulder can signal connection without overwhelming them. Over time, these small gestures build trust, proving that your closeness doesn't come with demands or expectations, and that trust becomes the bridge to the very hugs and intimacy you hope for. Another critical point to understand is the role of timing. A person who naturally distances themselves emotionally may need far more time to feel comfortable with physical touch than someone who instinctively leans into closeness. Rushing a hug, especially after conflict, stress, or a period of distance, can backfire. Even if they want to be close, the sudden move might feel like an ambush. Instead, consider the environment, the mood, and the rhythm of your interactions. Allow them to approach the physical connection at their own pace, sometimes simply giving a warm, inviting space without expecting anything immediate opens the door for authentic closeness later. And yet, even with patience and awareness, it's easy to fall into common mistakes that feel harmless but carry hidden consequences. Holding on too tightly, lingering when they pull back, or expecting affection in return can all create anxiety that pushes them away. Every hug carries an emotional undercurrent, and misreading that undercurrent can lead to frustration, miscommunication, and emotional distance. Recognizing these patterns is not about changing who you are or suppressing your love. It's about learning the subtle art of connection that honors both your feelings and theirs. Understanding these dynamics also requires awareness of your own emotional triggers. When someone pulls back, it can feel like rejection, and that emotional reaction can unconsciously cause you to push harder, which then triggers their avoidance even more. This cycle can repeat endlessly unless you develop emotional awareness and self-regulation. The goal is to create a space where they feel safe to lean in voluntarily, rather than feeling pressured or coerced. When done correctly, the simple act of hugging becomes a powerful tool for building trust, security, and emotional intimacy, rather than a potential trigger for withdrawal. At its core, this approach is about respect, patience, and empathy. Every small movement, every gentle adjustment, every careful observation adds up to a profound shift in how they experience your closeness. It's not instant, it's not flashy, it's subtle, often invisible, and incredibly effective over time. And for the person watching this, it means you have the power to transform moments that once felt stressful or confusing into moments of real connection and warmth. Finally, imagine the impact of approaching these interactions with understanding instead of frustration, with curiosity instead of judgment, and with patience instead of urgency. That moment when they finally relax into your hug, when the tension melts and you feel that mutual warmth, is not just a victory of physical closeness, it's the reward for every mindful step, every empathetic pause, every small gesture of respect for their boundaries. And that is exactly why knowing what not to do is crucial. Every misstep avoided is a step closer to authentic, lasting connection. Even with all the awareness and patience you bring, there are certain mistakes almost everyone makes at some point, mistakes that feel completely innocent in the moment, but can unintentionally trigger the very distance you're trying to close. The first mistake is often the easiest to fall into: hugging too tightly. You might feel that holding them close expresses love, reassurance, or care, and it absolutely can, but only if they are ready to receive it. For someone who instinctively distances themselves, a tight embrace can feel like pressure, like a subtle trap they weren't prepared for. Their body might tense, their breath may become shallow, and you can almost feel the invisible walls going up. That tightening, that stiffening, is their way of saying, without words, "I'm feeling overwhelmed." It's not a rejection of you, it's a protective instinct. And the more forceful or prolonged the hug, the more likely it is to push them into emotional retreat. The second common mistake is holding on after they pull away. You see that slight step back, that subtle loosening of their posture, and your instinct is to cling, to reassure, to linger. You want to bridge the gap, to make them feel loved, and your heart is in the right place. But here's the hard truth. Lingering beyond their comfort is often experienced as a subtle violation of boundaries. It can create an internal conflict for them, where part of them wants to reciprocate and another part screams for space. The moment your hug outstays its welcome, tension spikes. The very connection you hope to deepen suddenly feels like a pressure point, and the retreat that follows may linger longer than expected. What you intended as comfort can easily become a catalyst for distance. Another mistake, closely related, is ignoring their signals altogether. Maybe they subtly shift their weight, glance away, or tense their hands, and you brush it off, thinking, they're fine. I just know they want this. This happens often because our hearts want connection so desperately that we overlook subtle signs of discomfort. But for someone who is naturally avoidant, these tiny cues are loud and urgent. They are their way of communicating, without words, that they need space. Ignoring them doesn't just make them uncomfortable in the moment, it can erode trust over time. Every time they feel unheard or misunderstood, the emotional walls become thicker. A hug that could have been a gentle bridge becomes a reminder of the risk of closeness, and they learn, consciously or unconsciously, to guard themselves even more carefully. Mistake number 4 is expecting immediate affection or closeness in return. You step into the hug thinking, if I show love, they will show it back, or this should melt their defenses instantly. But avoidants rarely work like that. Their emotional processing doesn't respond to immediacy, it responds to safety and consistency over time. When your expectations collide with their need for gradual closeness, frustration can creep in on both sides. You feel like your love isn't being reciprocated, and they feel pressured by a closeness they aren't ready to embrace. That invisible tension creates a subtle but real emotional friction that can linger far beyond a single hug. Understanding that closeness develops slowly, almost like a dance where each step is agreed upon silently, is critical to creating the safety they crave. The 5th mistake is perhaps the most insidious because it often goes unnoticed, using hugs to manipulate or influence them. It might seem harmless, a way to soften them up, to elicit affection, or to fix the distance, but any attempt to use touch as leverage can be perceived on a deep subconscious level. Avoidants are incredibly sensitive to perceived control. Even the subtlest attempt to sway them emotionally through physical closeness can trigger an immediate retreat response. What feels like gentle persuasion to you can feel like emotional coercion to them. Over time, these attempts chip away at trust, replacing the warmth and comfort a hug should bring with wariness and guardedness. Every hug should be an invitation, never a strategy. This distinction may feel subtle, but it is the difference between connection and distance, trust and caution, warmth and withdrawal. Understanding these common mistakes doesn't mean you should stop hugging or expressing love. It means you need to approach each gesture with heightened awareness, empathy and respect for their internal experience. The challenge and the beauty is learning to see the world through their lens without losing your own desire for intimacy. This requires deep emotional attunement, which is more than just paying attention to their body language. It's about sensing their nervous system, recognizing tension before it becomes resistance, and responding in ways that communicate, I am here, I respect you, and you are safe with me. When done consistently, even small adjustments can transform what was once a source of anxiety into a source of profound connection. For example, a slight adjustment in your approach to a hug can make an enormous difference. Instead of stepping in with arms wide open immediately, notice their posture and energy first. Are they leaning toward you, relaxed in your presence, or holding themselves in subtle tension? Sometimes a slow approach, a smile, or a soft verbal cue before physical touch allows them to prepare emotionally for closeness. Over time, these tiny gestures accumulate, creating a sense of predictability and safety. The hug becomes a shared choice, not an imposition, and that shared choice strengthens both the emotional bond and trust. It's also important to cultivate self-awareness during these moments. Your own feelings, excitement, frustration, longing, can unconsciously affect the way you approach them. Avoidants are highly attuned to emotional energy, not just actions. If you approach a hug with desperation, anxiety, or expectation, they can sense it immediately, and that energy can trigger withdrawal. Conversely, when your approach is calm, patient, and accepting, it invites them to lower their defenses naturally. You create an environment where closeness is safe, voluntary, and mutually nourishing, and that is exactly what allows hugs to become an instrument of connection rather than a trigger of avoidance. Another subtle factor is consistency. One day you might respect their space perfectly, another day you might unconsciously push, trying to close a gap. Avoidants notice these inconsistencies deeply. Each time their boundaries are unintentionally challenged, even slightly, the emotional walls they have constructed grow stronger. True progress comes not from sporadic perfect moments, but from consistent, gentle, and reliable patterns of interaction. Over time, they begin to trust that closeness doesn't come with risk, and the very hugs that once triggered anxiety can become moments of emotional safety and intimacy. It's also crucial to recognize the emotional ripple effect that even a small misstep can create. When a hug goes wrong, avoidance may retreat in subtle ways, pulling back in conversation, decreasing physical touch, or becoming emotionally unavailable for hours or days. This isn't a punishment. It's a natural response to feeling unsafe. If you react with frustration, guilt, or attempts to fix it immediately, you may unintentionally reinforce their defensive behavior. Instead, acknowledging the misstep silently, maintaining your calm, and providing consistent, non-intrusive support communicates safety far more effectively than words or apologies. Over time, these invisible acts of respect build resilience in the relationship, allowing both parties to feel secure and seen. Finally, it's important to remember that none of these mistakes define you or the relationship. They are opportunities for growth. They are signals that highlight the invisible rules of emotional closeness for someone who naturally distances themselves. Learning these lessons allows you to navigate physical intimacy with grace, sensitivity, and profound empathy. Each misstep avoided, each subtle adjustment made, creates the fertile ground for trust, emotional safety, and ultimately the authentic closeness you are hoping to achieve. Now that you understand the mistakes that can unintentionally push someone away, it's time to shift the focus toward what works, how to approach hugging someone who naturally distances themselves in a way that feels safe, respectful, and emotionally nurturing. The first key strategy is giving space before any physical contact. It may seem counterintuitive. After all, the goal is connection. But for someone who instinctively retreats from closeness, allowing them to breathe, to feel comfortable in your presence, is the foundation for every future hug. Space is not absence. It is an invitation for them to approach on their own terms, a demonstration that you honor their boundaries. When you allow this breathing room, you are quietly saying, "I am here, I care, and I am patient enough to let you come to me." That alone begins to lower the internal tension that might otherwise make a hug feel threatening. The second approach is all about body language and energy. Even before your arms move, your posture, tone, and facial expressions speak volumes. Open, relaxed body language communicates non-threat. A soft smile, gentle eye contact, and a calm presence can be far more inviting than words ever could. When someone who distances themselves senses that your energy is safe, they can gradually relax their guard. Even subtle gestures, leaning in slightly without closing the distance completely, keeping your hands visible and relaxed, or mirroring their movements, create a rhythm that feels intuitive rather than imposed. This is not manipulation, it is empathy in action. It signals without words, "I am aligned with your comfort and you can trust me." A third crucial approach is mirroring their comfort level. Every person has a different threshold for physical touch, and avoidants are often particularly sensitive to it. Rather than assuming they will welcome a full, immediate hug, pay attention to the cues they give. Do they step closer or retreat slightly? Do they maintain gentle eye contact or look away? By matching their pace, perhaps starting with a side hug, a brief touch on the shoulder, or a gentle, fleeting embrace, you demonstrate awareness of their needs. This careful calibration tells them you are attuned to them, creating a space where closeness feels voluntary and mutually respectful. Over time, this mirroring builds trust, showing that physical connection can be gentle, safe, and predictable rather than overwhelming. The fourth strategy involves combining words with touch. Sometimes avoidants need verbal reassurance alongside physical gestures. Simple phrases like "I respect your space" or "You're safe with me," spoken softly before or during a hug, can drastically shift their perception of the interaction. Words anchor the experience, helping them understand that your intentions are pure and that you are not trying to force closeness. This communication transforms the hug from an ambiguous event into a shared understanding, making the emotional connection far more secure. It's a subtle but powerful way of saying, "This is safe, this is welcome. You don't have to guard yourself here." Patience and empathy are the fifth and perhaps most critical approach. Real change and genuine comfort cannot be rushed. Avoidants need time to internalize that closeness is safe, that a hug won't lead to suffocation, and that their boundaries will be respected. This patience isn't passive, it's active, deliberate, and emotionally intelligent. It means showing consistent warmth, allowing for gradual increases in intimacy, and celebrating small victories. Even brief, gentle interactions can accumulate, slowly lowering the internal walls that once made hugs feel threatening. Every moment of patience reinforces trust, and trust becomes the bridge to intimacy. When approached this way, a hug becomes more than a physical gesture. It becomes an emblem of safety, understanding, and connection. These strategies also emphasize the importance of observing and listening with your whole self. Pay attention to the subtle shifts in their breathing, the tension in their shoulders, or the slight tilts of their head. These are often silent cues that speak louder than words. Responding to them appropriately, slowing down, softening your approach, or pausing altogether, signals that you are not only present but truly attuned to their inner experience. Avoidants often struggle to express their needs directly because vulnerability can feel unsafe. By reading and honoring these cues, you create an unspoken dialogue of trust and understanding. It's a communication that is felt deeply rather than explained, and it resonates far more powerfully than any words alone. Another dimension to consider is the emotional rhythm of interactions. Hugging is not just a single event, it is part of a larger pattern of connection. When you consistently approach interactions with empathy, patience, and sensitivity, the small gestures add up. Avoidants begin to notice a predictable pattern. Moments of closeness do not come with pressure, intimacy does not bring judgment, and their boundaries are consistently respected. This cumulative effect reshapes their internal narrative, helping them move from anxiety around closeness to comfort and even anticipation. Hugs become opportunities for warmth, reassurance, and trust, rather than triggers for withdrawal. It's also vital to practice self-regulation and mindfulness during these interactions. Your own emotions, anticipation, frustration, longing, can inadvertently influence their response. Approaching a hug with calm, centered energy is crucial. Avoidants are remarkably sensitive to emotional tone, and a rushed, anxious, or needy approach can escalate their internal discomfort. Conversely, when you are composed, confident, and attuned to their needs, it creates a gravitational pull toward connection. They can sense your stability, your patience, and your respect, which makes the hug not only more welcome, but emotionally grounding for both of you. Equally important is consistency in your behavior. Sporadic sensitivity or random displays of patience can confuse someone who naturally distances themselves. Inconsistent interactions, sometimes respecting boundaries, sometimes overstepping, reinforce their need for vigilance and push them further into emotional retreat. The goal is to become a reliable presence, someone whose actions align predictably with their needs. Over time, this consistency becomes the foundation of trust, and trust allows them to lean in more freely, both emotionally and physically. Finally, integrating all these approaches requires emotional awareness and humility. Every attempt to connect is a learning opportunity, not a performance or test. Recognizing that they may still retreat occasionally, that missteps are inevitable, and that patience is required, allows you to approach the relationship with grace. Hugs, once fraught with anxiety and potential rejection, transform into moments of shared warmth and understanding. Each careful adjustment, each empathetic pause, and each word of reassurance contributes to a growing sense of safety. And slowly but surely, what once felt impossible, a mutually comforting embrace, becomes not only achievable but deeply nourishing for both of you. As you begin to implement these approaches, something remarkable starts to happen. Hugs, which once carried a sense of tension and uncertainty, begin to shift in energy. You notice subtle changes in the way they respond, slight relaxations in their shoulders, softer breathing, even the faintest smile that wasn't there before. These small signs are like little windows into their emotional world, revealing a growing sense of trust. It's in these moments that the magic of connection begins to unfold. When someone who is naturally avoidant starts to lean into the embrace willingly, without tension, it's not just physical closeness, it's an unspoken declaration of safety, an emotional bridge that spans the space between hearts. But to get to this stage, it's crucial to understand the gradual nature of comfort. Avoidants rarely allow themselves to feel fully at ease all at once. Each positive interaction is a small step, each safe hug a piece of evidence that closeness doesn't always lead to overwhelm. These incremental moments create a cumulative effect, slowly reshaping how they perceive intimacy. Over time, hugs become a predictable source of warmth, rather than a potential threat. The power of this gradual transformation is profound. What once felt tense, fleeting, or even intimidating now becomes a source of connection and reassurance that deepens with each encounter. Learning to recognize signs they are becoming comfortable is key to sustaining this connection. You might notice their body naturally leaning toward you rather than away, or their arms relax instead of staying rigid. Their breathing deepens and their eyes soften. Even subtle gestures like allowing their hand to linger on yours or responding with a quiet smile indicate that they are beginning to trust your presence fully. These signs are not just about physical comfort. They reflect emotional safety, a willingness to be vulnerable, and a sense of security in your connection. Paying attention to these cues allows you to reinforce positive interactions and continue building intimacy at a pace that feels natural for both of you. Equally important is understanding the emotional resonance of a hug. When you approach someone who is avoidant with patience, awareness, and empathy, the hug becomes more than a gesture. It becomes an emotional signal. It says, without words, I am here, I respect you, and I care about your comfort. This emotional resonance lingers after the physical embrace ends, creating a safe space in which they can process their feelings and gradually lean into closeness. The hug becomes a touchstone for emotional safety, a small but powerful ritual that reinforces trust and connection every time it occurs. As you continue navigating these interactions, it's essential to integrate reflection and self-awareness. Each moment of connection, each hug, provides feedback, both about their comfort and your approach. Reflecting on these interactions helps you refine your behavior, adjust your pace, and deepen your understanding of their emotional boundaries. It's not about perfection, it's about responsiveness, empathy, and a willingness to meet them where they are. Over time, this reflective practice strengthens both your confidence and their trust, creating a dynamic in which hugs and all forms of closeness can flourish without fear or tension. When the time comes to recap, it's helpful to remember the journey so far. Avoidants are not rejecting you when they pull away, they are protecting themselves. Hugs carry emotional weight, and mistakes like squeezing too tightly, ignoring subtle cues, expecting immediate affection, or attempting to manipulate closeness can trigger withdrawal. Conversely, giving space, reading body language, mirroring comfort levels, using words alongside touch, practicing patience, and maintaining consistency all create an environment in which hugs become a source of safety, trust, and emotional warmth. Each strategy works in tandem, slowly dismantling the invisible walls that once made intimacy feel threatening. Finally, the call to action is about both reflection and engagement. Consider how you approach intimacy in your own relationships. Are there small adjustments you can make to better respect someone's emotional boundaries? Are there moments where patience, empathy, or awareness could transform a potentially tense interaction into a source of warmth and connection? If you have personal experiences with hugging someone who is avoidant, take a moment to reflect on what worked and what didn't. Then share it. Comments are a space for conversation, understanding, and community. By exploring these dynamics openly, you not only deepen your own understanding, but also provide support to others navigating the same challenges. In the end, the journey of hugging an avoidant is not a test of strength, willpower, or emotional control. It's a journey of empathy, awareness, and patient connection. Each thoughtful hug, each gentle pause, each subtle acknowledgement of their boundaries becomes a building block for trust. Over time, those bricks create an unshakable foundation where intimacy can grow naturally and safely. The reward is profound, moments of authentic closeness, shared vulnerability, and emotional resonance that touch both hearts deeply. By understanding what not to do and embracing what you can do instead, you transform the simple act of a hug into a powerful gesture of love, safety, and connection that speaks louder than words ever could. Ultimately, the beauty lies in the small, mindful steps. It is in noticing the way they lean in slightly, the way their hands soften, the quiet sigh of relaxation that follows a hug done right. It is in the patience, the empathy, the unwavering respect for their boundaries that real intimacy flourishes. And it is in these moments, seemingly ordinary yet profoundly transformative, that the connection you've been seeking all along finally becomes tangible. Hugs, once a source of tension or fear, now carry a new meaning: safety, trust, and the quiet celebration of two hearts learning to meet each other halfway.